human. Who? Yeah!
Why don't you give me half the money you were going to bet? Then we'll go out there, I'll kick you in the nuts, and we'll call it a day.
Sounds of hockey. Wild.
Oh my gosh. Above average.
Oh, good.
If there's one show on this station that doesn't need bright lights, I would think it would be the Power Trip morning show. But I walk in here and it's like the sun is directly in my eyeballs. What is going on here? Are they doing an actual television production?
Pretty much.
Honestly, the lighting was as bright as the surface of the sun. Good morning. Kevin Falness along with Brett Blakemore. We're here for the next 3 hours in for Paul Allen and Eric Nordquist. And we got a ton of hockey to jam down your throat over the course of the next 3 hours because it's that time of year, Brett. When I look at what's going on for this Wild team leading up to this point and what's on the horizon, including tonight in Dallas, exciting time to be a Wild fan, a hockey fan, or just a sports fan in general.
This is as good as it gets for Wild fans. It's the most talented team, essentially fully healthy, going into Dallas to play your first round opponent with 2 points on the line that could tie things up with 3 games to play for both teams. Nothing could be, or a little bit more than that, nothing could be more on the line and exciting if you're a Wild fan right now.
Let me tell you this, and I know for me, I can't believe it, but we finally almost made it. For a hockey fan, dare I say a sports fan, the best time of year is, in fact, almost upon us. And I'm talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs. Especially when you have a dog in the fight, and the Wild have more than just a dog this time around. They've got a bona fide Stanley Cup contender. You want firepower? How about 240 goal scorers? You want depth scoring? How about no less than 9 skaters with double digits? Toughness? The Wild have the NHL hits leader and plenty of beef. If you want to play that style, they can bring it. The blue line, top to bottom, as good as anyone in the National Hockey League, and the goaltending tandem is amongst the best in the league as well. This was a season that started way back in mid-September. Training camp into preseason hockey, followed by October, November, December, January, February, March, and now finally, here we are in the month of April. 7 months, and to this point, 78 games in the books. And yes, it's had its ups and downs, but through it all, the Wild have consistently skated with the best teams in the National Hockey League. They enter the postseason as a team, in my mind, with a legitimate chance of making a deep run. Now, I know, Brett, it's been a decade and change since they made it out of the first round, and some out there listening are skeptical. They're hesitant to jump on board. But I'm here to tell you, that's no way to live life. This is the best team in franchise history, and it ain't close. Something's different about this Minnesota Wild team. So now's the time. The Wild are almost back in the playoffs. 4 games left to go in the regular season. Time to find some glory and bring some joy to the state of hockey. Hopefully it starts tonight in Dallas against the Stars at American Airlines Center. What's on the line? To some degree, home ice advantage for whatever that's worth. I think that'd be a nice feather in their cap. Home ice advantage for the first round of the playoffs. I think that would be great. And I'll tell you this much. I know the Wild have gone up against the Stars twice in the postseason prior, and they've come up short both of those times. I think this is as good a chance as the Wild have ever had to make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Guarantees them nothing. The Stars are pretty good. The Avalanche are even better. But this Wild team is stacked for the first time in franchise history. I feel a little bit of a swagger going into the postseason that I don't know that I've had before. How about you, Brett?
I feel the same. I feel optimism. I feel like it's not just we're walking into a gauntlet. I think this Dallas team is gettable. Full disclosure, Ottinger does scare me a little bit, but I think this is the most offensive firepower the Wild have ever seen, and it's not close. So I say let's play and let's get to the first round. Let's get these games over with. But tonight, I do think that home ice, I get it's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. I think it's something worth playing for, and not, we shouldn't just rest our guys now because it doesn't matter either which way. That last change in Game 7, if it does come to that, that's huge for me.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake for sure. The pressure goes straight on the shoulders of whoever's got home ice advantage, and especially in games 1 and games 2. God forbid you drop game 1, but even game 2, going out of there with a split would be less than what you'd hope for. But again, having the potential of having a game 7 in St. Paul, I think would be just absolutely fantastic. We've got lots of folks coming on the airwaves over the course of the next 3 hours to talk about that and more, including Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com. He's got boots on the ground in Dallas. He'll join us at the bottom of the hour. 10 o'clock hour, we got Charlie Stramel. I got to get that right. Charlie Stramel with the long A. Wild Prospect signed his entry-level deal earlier this week, so we'll get a chance to catch up with him and talk about the future of the Minnesota Wild. But the here and now will be covered by Kevin Gorg, bottom of next hour. Wild General Manager Bill Guerin about 11 o'clock, and then our good friend Brandon Molesky will come in before he gets his act underway for the program at 12 o'clock with the common man, Dan Cole. I am excited. I think there's reason for optimism, but I don't know that a lot of it hinges upon tonight. I mean, do you show everything you got tonight? Even though it is your first round matchup, it's a playoff preview. Do you bring all your toys out and show, okay, this is what we got, and we're going to set the tone, and we got to get this one, and we've got to, like I say, are you trying to set the tone for the playoffs tonight? Is it all established tonight, or do you just kind of throw it out there and see what happens?
If I'm John Hines, I say yes. I say why not set the tone and send a message like, we're not just here for you to push around and get your first round win out of the way. Like, no, we're here to play, and this is the best team in franchise history. I love just setting the tone tonight and tying this thing up. I mean, we thought this was impossible a week ago, that this was not going to happen. The Stars continue to be average at best. Same with the Avs, by the way, have not been fantastic this last month and change.
Yep.
And the Wild continue, at least in this late run of most recent, to keep winning. So we'll take that, and now you're 2 points out. You've got everything to play for down the stretch if you win this game tonight.
See what happens. It would be nice to get this one, because then it keeps hope alive, gives you something to play for the final 3 games of the regular season. But you got to get this one to make that happen. And it has been a good series to this point. It's been pretty close. The Wild got thumped in Dallas at the start of the season, 5-2, but they repaid the favor. Got them 5-2 in St. Paul, I believe, in December, and then they beat them in overtime on that wonderful goal by Vladimir Tarasenko, set up by Bobby Brink last month. So Wild have the edge in the season series for whatever that's worth, but they can take the lead and win it with a victory tonight in Big D. Pre-game at 7:45, puck drops just after 8 o'clock. I haven't heard about any special puck drop, even though it's a national broadcast. That's what always scares me when I hear ESPN, Hulu, TNT. But as far as I know, it's an 8:08 puck drop. So I think that'll change in the playoffs, most likely. People are trying to tell me that no, it'll probably be potential 7 or 8 o'clock starts. I'm guessing it's going to be more like 8:52. That's just the way it works for the Wild in the playoffs. And in my recent memories,
does that mean extended pregame?
That means potentially. Not my call. Despite what Dan Barrero or Justin Gard would say, it's not like I'm just sitting there. What? More airtime? No, thank you. I'd rather not. No, of course I'd say yes, but the decision wouldn't be up to me.
Well, the beauty of it is that you get ripped either way. If you don't do 100%. It, you get ripped. And if you do, well, Kevin wants to hog up all the airtime.
Yes.
So
exactly.
You're in a no-win situation.
Trust me, if we don't do it, it's not because I said no. That's never the case. Why don't we get the first break out of the way? We've got so much hockey over the next 3 hours. I might throw it at you to do a little news de Nord here, because people, give them something, kind of like what do you call it? A refresher.
Palate cleanser.
Palate cleanser. That's exactly what I was looking for. We're going to have a ton of hockey over the next 3 hours. Don't worry about that. But I know the Timberwolves played last night. The Twins played. There's rumor of an NFL draft right around the corner as well. So we could probably talk about all that and more with News de Nord next. And then don't forget, Russo joins us from the bottom of the hour from Dallas.
The Fan.
All right, so we call it a palate cleanser now that we got the verbiage out of the way, and I think that's good. Give people a little opportunity. You don't have to just jump into the deep end when it comes to hockey and the playoffs and the Minnesota Wild with just 4 games left to go in the regular season. There's plenty of other things going on, and this will probably be the window for it. So what else is happening in your world, Brett Blakemore?
Number 1.
I mean, this is the most important thing happening in my world. The Masters.
I was hoping you'd say that.
A tradition unlike any other. Hello, friends. It's underway officially. Jack Nicklaus, not his best drive to start the morning, but as you would expect, still legend of the game. That was at like 6:30 if you wanted to wake up and watch that live. So we've got your leaders, someone named, I'm not familiar with, Jose Maria Olazabal, I'm going with.
Olazabal.
Yep.
That's a good name.
I have only been a golf sicko for a few years now.
Okay,
so
Olazabal is a good one.
But then you got Sam Burns, Max Homa, Jake Knapp, all kind of leading the way. Lowry's in the mix at 1 under. But yeah, Sam Burns is tied for first with, say his name again?
Olazabal.
With 2 under.
Let me say this. I think you're a bigger golf rube than I am, and I follow it from a periphery, 100%. I don't follow it as hardcore as you or Common or even Brandon. Who's your pick?
I really like Ludwig. I like Oberg. I think he's been in the mix this year. He's been at the mix the last couple years at Augusta. He also had that. He was in control of the players a couple months ago, or a month or change ago, and then just completely collapsed on the back nine. So I just think that he's got a game, and he just is a robot. It looks like he was built in a lab for a golfing scientist, mad creation. That's what it looks like. So give me Oberg. I wouldn't be shocked if Rory or Scotty win it either, but that would be, if I had to pick, I think Ludd gets it done.
How much did you pay attention to the action leading up to today? For example, did you take in any of the par 3 stuff yesterday?
I didn't take in the par 3.
But you saw Kelsey.
I saw Kelsey.
Dumb. So annoying.
If there's one thing, I think Kelsey's starting to get to, because I've said, I don't think Kevin Hart's a bad guy, but I just see him everywhere. It's like the same thing with Jelly Roll. You see him everywhere. I think Jason Kelsey's getting to that point where, all right, you're a good dude. I've seen enough.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
if there's anything that should be protected, it should be the Masters.
Well, I'm not the music person that a lot of, as Helvey, for example, but I've had enough Taylor Swift, for example, in everything, and let alone my NFL coverage. I've had enough of both of the Kelsey brothers. I've really had enough of Patrick Mahomes, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, the Kelsey brothers and him at the par 3 was a little over the top.
Yeah, but it's still cool. Tommy Fleetwood's kid was adorable. Couldn't get to the green. But that was the big story, all the kids. So, yeah, I watched at one point Victor Hovland range session on my phone on the app. That's how I know you're a sicko.
So when you're not here, that's what you'll be doing, watching the Masters.
Well,
Thursday through Sunday.
That is correct. It'll be that. And then later today, going into
Number 2.
we said no hockey.
Here we go. You just can't help yourself. See, this is why we get in trouble.
Frozen 4.
Okay, all right.
Hang on. Before we go wild, the Frozen 4, basically Gopher's worst nightmare. One of these teams getting into the national championship. It's either North Dakota or Wisconsin. That is at 4:00. It'll be on, I think, ESPN2.
Yep.
So Frozen 4, and then on the other side, Michigan and Denver. That's later tonight. So if you want, this is a great sports day for Double B. You've got Masters all day. You've got Frozen 4 with my dad's team, the Wisconsin Badgers, who we love. And then wild hockey tonight with everything on the line against the Stars. I will be firmly planted
a good
in
day,
my couch today.
Indeed. I mentioned that Kevin Gorg is going to join us later in the program. And of course, we'll talk Wild and Stars with him, but he's very eclectic when it comes to being a sports fan. So we'll talk a little Masters with him. We'll talk Kentucky Derby. And of course, we'll talk Frozen 4. And as I'm going to say to him, I don't know how you pick against DU. With David Carl and that resume and everything they've done, I know the field is stacked, and I know any of the 4 teams could really come away with the hardware. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, and if I was going to Vegas, which I won't, I would put my money down on DU and David Carl. I just think he's that good. I think he's that good of a coach.
Keep sleeping on my dad's Wisconsin Badgers at your own peril. We'll go here.
Number 3.
Just so that we're not hypocrites. So we're not texting into Barrero saying, missed where the Wild were.
Yeah.
Well, the Wolves played a game last night.
I watched some of it.
You did?
I did. I might have been one of the
few.
I know it was in Orlando, and I know that 3/4 of their lineup was out watching it in street clothes, laughing and smiling on the sidelines as they're getting thumped by the Magic.
They clinched, and so they said, we're good. And now Jaden did come back, so we like that he finally got cleared and is healthy. 18 points in 19 minutes. Cool. That's good to see. But then, Terrence Shannon scoring 33 points, unexpected. But yeah, it was a game that was over midway through the third quarter. It's over.
This isn't the flex that it sounds like, but I've got 2 TVs set up. They're garbage TVs,
Lucky.
and I've got a couple of Amazon Fire Sticks, so it's not the flex that you think it is. But I'm watching whatever my wife wants to on one screen, and on the other, I can watch whatever sporting event is on. I didn't have the sound on, and that's not a shot at Alan Horn because I think he's fantastic. But I know him and Jim Peterson were on the television call last night. But it was just I was kind of flipping between that and whatever NHL action was going on because it didn't feel like it was a contest at all. And again, I look on the sidelines and I see all these familiar faces in street clothes just laughing it up despite the fact they've been up 130 points to the Orlando Magic. It didn't capture my imagination. Now, I will pay attention. I know. Stop the presses. I will pay attention to the NBA playoffs and especially the Minnesota Timberwolves once they tip that thing off. But last night, I don't think captured anyone's imagination.
I would tend to agree. By the way,
Sean, from the 612 area code, if he's truly a golf fan, he'd know that Jose Maria Olazabal was a past Masters champion. The problem is you're about 15 years old, and it was probably before that.
It was before. Well, I said I'm still a learning golf sicko. I don't know everything and all the history, but I know a lot of the current guys, and I'm learning. So I'm getting there. I knew I was going to get ripped for that, and rightfully so. Let's see. We'll move on to this quote.
Number 4.
Kirk Cousins, he signed with the Raiders. The draft is coming up. The fan has learned.
Yep.
I hear we're going to cover it at some point.
Yep. They're doing a mock draft right now. Meets us and Ben Lieber.
Yeah.
I love it.
Kirk Cousins, he said, quote, "If it's not me, I don't want to be out there." I don't think that's the best thing for the team. If I am the best option, then I believe it's important for those guys. Or if I am the best option, then I believe it's important that those guys are out there, but I'm excited to get a chance to lead, blah, blah, blah. He's basically saying, I'm going to be in a quarterback competition with Mendoza, and if I don't win, that's fine. But he's saying, I'm in a competition. That's me reading between the lines, but you know that the Raiders are going to go with Mendoza. Seems to me like Cousins isn't giving up the ghost on being the starter in Vegas.
What do you think his legacy is here in Minnesota, Kirk Cousins?
I would...
Above average?
I'm probably not the person to ask for this. My legacy of Kirk Cousins here, the first thing I think of was that 4th and 8.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing because it was just so classic Kirk where you have to throw the ball beyond the line. You have to.
It's just one
and
of those.
He takes a check down.
It's a completion, and that looks good from a percentage standpoint, but just short of the chains. And again, a vintage Kirk Cousins move when the lights are the brightest.
It's just when you have to make something happen and have that special creativeness to get over the line, it just seemed like Kirk, he was a solid quarterback. No one ever said he was a bad quarterback. No one. But the fact that he has one playoff win and has made more money over his career than Tom Brady, that about says it all.
Are you a DeChambeau hater?
I go back and forth. Sometimes I think he's likable, like in his YouTube videos, and sometimes he does things where I'm like, ugh, that doesn't, like the whole Rory situation. And did you hear about the flipping of a tee? No. In the last round? So there's like 5 different documentaries on Rory's win. I recommend every one of them. But there was a moment, I can't remember what green it was on, where it was similar putts. And Rory thought it was his. Bryson thought it was his to go. Everyone wants to go first so that if they make the putt, the pressure's on the other guy. And Bryce just says, let's just flip a tee for it. And Rory's like, no, it's the Masters. We're not playing for skins at, some local country club.
$10 a skin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't. But
I just was watching him shoot.
Yeah.
I was talking.
Really?
I drove my kid to school this morning, and I asked him who his pick was, and he threw out Tiger Woods and Bryson DeChambeau. I said, you might want to pick up a paper. And I said, I don't think
one of those names could hit. Yeah,
right. So that's why I just watched DeChambeau his approach shot. I think on 2, and it was just caught my attention. That's all. Sorry.
By the way, the Twins play later today. They have won 3 out of 3 against the Tigers here at Target Field. They get the Tigers again for a 4-game sweep.
I'll tell you,
if you're interested.
I don't get an opportunity to watch the Twins much. I don't have whatever that thing is to watch them on TV. They were on last night on FS1, so I did pay attention to that. They almost blew a significant lead. It came down to the end, and they were able to hang on. But that was it was fun to be able to watch them for a change. Didn't feel like there was a lot of people at Target Field, man. I hate what has become with that. It used to be an event to go to a Twins game.
Only one name to blame.
Yeah, I know. I
get it was cold. I understand it was cold. I wouldn't want to go, but
no.
I have a sneaking suspicion once full summer hits, it'll be more, but not as much as they think.
Are the Tigers supposed to be good this year?
Your guess is as good as mine, but I would venture a guess that no.
No.
But I don't. I haven't followed the Detroit Tigers as closely as I once did.
All right.
There you go.
That's it?
Yeah. All
right. Well, let's squeeze in a break then we can go to Dallas and get Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com on the air. Maybe we'll do some Brett Blakemore's breakaways later. You ready to go for that if we need to?
Oh, of course. Always.
Maybe we'll call. I was going to have Pat on today, but of course he's traveling. His flight just happened to be between 9 and noon as he's going to Vegas. But that'll make for a fun Beyond the Pond on Saturday because we'll have Micheletti from Vegas, site of the Frozen Four championship game, the national championship game in men's hockey. So we'll save him for Saturday. But up next, we've got the emperor, the czar of all things hockey. His name is Michael Russo, and he's next on The Fan.
Offensive blue line kicked it back. Hartman fired in front. It's blocked. And that does it. The Minnesota Wild have won 4 straight. They get the last 4 goals of this hockey game. They sweep the season series from the Kraken. And the Wild inching closer to home ice, potentially in the first round. Get another win here. 5-2 the final in St. Paul.
That's what it sounded like Tuesday night in St. Paul. Wild beat the Kraken in the second to last home game of the regular season. Tonight, they're on the road. Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com is on the road as well. He's in Dallas, joins us for a preview of tonight and a potential first round playoff preview as well as we look ahead past the final 4 games of the regular season. Michael, how's Dallas treating you?
Good. How are you?
I'm outstanding. Are you at American Airlines Center? You said you're meeting with the Stars when you're done here at about 10 o'clock.
Yeah, they're. I'll go over there and right after I get off with you, and they got a 10:30 full skate. It sounds like so. We'll get Glenn Gulletson and get their thoughts on the team and find out tonight's lineup because they're a lot more banged up than the Wild are right now. So we'll see if they get any guys back, but clearly they'll have some of their injured guys back for the playoffs.
Before we talk about tonight and before we look ahead to the Wild and Stars in the postseason, help me recap the season as a whole. How would you sum it up with just 4 games left before the Stanley Cup playoffs, 78 games in the books for the Wild? What have you thought of it start to this point?
Look, they had a tough month of October. Imagine where they'd be right now if they didn't have that tough month. Imagine where they'd be right now if they took care of some of their home games in the second half, especially against non-playoff teams. But it's been a good year. I mean, to be one of the top 3 teams in the Western Conference, I think that is that clearly is representative of what we've seen on the ice. Clearly, Quinn Hughes was a total game changer. Boldy has just upped his level dramatically, even since last season, where I thought he was great, but a lot less streaks. He's been just good from the start of the season on. He was the one bright spot in October. And I look at them as having the ability to score from 3 different lines. They have a good shutdown pair, obviously, in Brodin and Spurgeon, and a dynamic pair in Faber and Hughes. So as long as they get goaltending in the first round, I think that they have a chance to move on.
We've been talking about this on the radio broadcast for a while now, and I feel like it's been cemented as we get closer to the finish line. You've watched this team for a long time. You've seen what they put on the ice in the history of this franchise. It's not close, right? This is the best team in franchise history?
Yeah, like what team has had 3 legitimate superstars on it, and just, budding stars and guys like, Faber and players like that. We've covered, the one good thing about if you're a Wild fan and if you're around the team is that every single year the Wild regular seasons have been really, really good, interesting. They're always in it. That nobody has made the playoffs more than them in the last dozen years. I thought that 2007 team was great. I thought the 2008 team was great. I thought the 14 team could have done damage. Unfortunately, that year and the subsequent couple years or years right before that, they ran into the Chicago, if you want to call it a dynasty. But yeah, this is the one team that I really feel has a chance to do damage, especially because this is such a different team than the 2023 team that played the Dallas Stars in the first round of the playoffs. Remember, Faber was just literally fresh off the Frozen Four ice. Boldy, remember, it was after that playoff series where Guerin read him the gauntlet and basically said, if you want to perform in the playoffs, you have to get your nose dirty and go to the tough players. Kirill Kaprizov was hurt going into that series. Joel Eriksson Ek didn't play in that series. Ryan Hartman played on a knee injury in that series. I just think that this team right now going against this Dallas team gives them a real opportunity. That was even Gustafson's, first learning experience of the playoffs. So I just think that there's a lot of reasons to really be optimistic going into the postseason.
And they're healthy.
As long as they stay healthy.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That was the one thing. I mean, look, there are 4 games left in the season. Because they're going to home ice now, it really does change the complexion because, I was convinced that they were going to play almost nobody in this game, not to risk injury against the team that you're going to face in the first round. And look, they're going to sign this, Viking Gustafsson Nyberg today. The plan was to play him in the last 3 games, or at least 1 or 2 of the last couple games. Who knows if that happens now, if they win tonight. Originally when Charlie Stramel was healthy, he was going to play in 1 or 2 of the final games. They probably would have done what they did. Remember game 82, the year that John Hines' last game with the Nashville Predators, the Wild went into Nashville, and they brought up players like Damon Giroux to play there and make their NHL debut and players like that. So I really thought these last 3 games they were going to start resting guys. Now, if they win tonight and are going for home ice these last 3 games, it changes everything. So the health, becomes a little bit of a concern because you'd love to give these guys a little bit of rest going into the playoffs. But they're facing a team tonight that's formidable. They have a great top line in Jason Robertson, who's had a magnificent year, Wyatt Johnson, who's a star, and obviously Mikko Rantanen, who Wild fans know really well. And then when they get play drivers like Rupe Hintz back or players like that. I think Roddick Fox is out for them. Tyler Myers got banged up the other night. Sam Steele's out. Which is ironic because remember Sam Steele all of a sudden became the Wild's top line center that playoff series in 2023 when Hartman and Eriksson Ek were hurt. So as long as the Wild stay healthy, I really do like them.
Do you expect playoff intensity tonight? Because home ice is on the line, and this will be a preview of the first round matchup between the Wild and Stars. But do you expect there to have that bite tonight at American Airlines Center?
I do. I mean, especially guys like the Folignos, if Nick gets in, and obviously Marcus and McCarron and these guys, Trenyan, they're going to want to be physical with these guys, take runs at them, and they're going to want to, without a doubt, let them know what they're going to have to deal with in the first round. You get close to Gustafsson tonight, you're probably going to have to deal with a Michael McCarron, players like that. But even more so than the home ice advantage, I just think they want to put their best game on the ice to, one, give them confidence and momentum going into the postseason, and a belief that they can win specifically in this building, because obviously the Wild are 2-1 against the Stars this year. But this is the building where they historically have issues since from day one that I started covering this organization. And the other reason is just to let Dallas know what they are going to be dealing with, that this is not going to be some pushover. So I do expect intensity tonight.
I feel going into the playoffs, the top 6 is set, right? I mean, the top line with Hartman in between, Kaprizov and Zuccarello, that's a done deal. You're not going to break up Ek with Boldy and Johansson. Everything else is kind of up for grabs, right? The bottom 6 is where the question marks are. Top 6 set in stone?
Yes, I totally agree with you. And then really it's going to come down to at forward, two of the last, 2 of 3 guys between Nick Foligno, Danilo Yurov, and Bobby Brink. 2 of those 3 will be in the lineup. Obviously, Fabry and Sturm won't start in the lineup if they're healthy. And so what it comes down to is what kind of lineup do you want? Do you want a heavy lineup where you play Nick Foligno? But if you do that, if you keep Yurov in, then you go back to the all-Russian line of Tarasenko, Yurov and Bobby Brink. If you want Nick Foligno in and you take Yurov out based on face-offs or things like that, you're almost guaranteeing that Nick Foligno or Michael McCarron is going to have to be your third line center. I don't really love that. And then if you start Nick Foligno in the press box and you have an intriguing third line of Tarasenko, Yurov and Bobby Brink, you're giving Tarasenko a really skilled winger to kind of play off of. And it gives you really three lines that could potentially score. So that to me is the most intriguing line, is maybe starting with Nick Foligno in the press box and going with a McCarron, Marcus Foligno, Trenyan fourth line with Tarasenko, Yurov, and Brink on the third line. But we'll see. We could really get a good look at what John Hines is thinking based on what lineup he's going to use tonight, because it would make sense for him to use the lineup that he's thinking for game one tonight, but we'll see.
What have you seen from Bobby Brink? To me, he's intriguing and a guy that could play just about anywhere in your lineup, but I've only seen flashes of what I hope the potential is of this kid.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a playmaker, and he's willing to go to the tough areas. I feel like every time he's on the ice, he makes a play. The other night in the first period, which wasn't a good first period for the Wild, Bobby Brink set up three shot. He had 3 shot assists that set up scoring chances, as they call them in the analytical world. Mm-hmm. And so I really do like him. I think the one issue might be size, that if they want to go with a heavier lineup, he'd be the obvious guy to take out. And then you have a really beefy third line. If you have Trenyan on it, and then obviously the kind of meat and potatoes fourth line, if you have Marcus and Nick on that line with McCarron. So we'll see. The one thing I will say, whatever decision John Hines makes for game one, it's not going to be what the decision is in game, for Wild fans. I was going to jokingly say win 16 in the playoffs come June, right? I mean, they're going to have to use a lot of their different guys. And so if they start off with a Nick Foligno in the lineup and take Bobby Brink out, it might really, tick off some Wild fans, obviously. But the reality is that one loss and you're changing lineups and you're making decisions like that. So what they start with isn't necessarily what they end with. And the other thing that we'll have to see is Zach Bogosian's health. He's dealing with the high ankle right now. He's had unbelievable bad luck with his lower body this year. And so we'll see, if Petrie is in the lineup versus Bogosian. I know they'd love to get Bogosian healthy, but they got to have him healthy. You don't want him on one leg if you have Petrie on the team.
Talking to Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com. He's in Dallas, where tonight the Minnesota Wild will face off against the Stars. You can hear all the action right here on The Fan. Pregame at 7:45. Puck drop sometime after 8 o'clock. You mentioned Vladimir Tarasenko, and I'm wondering what your thoughts of Tarasenko were when they signed him back in whatever that was, July, compared to the guy that has blossomed here in a Wild uniform. I didn't have a lot of expectations for him, Michael, and I certainly didn't expect 23-some goals from the guy. Not only have I enjoyed watching him on the ice, I think you've had conversations with him off the ice as well. I was pleasantly surprised at what a good human being he is.
Yeah, and we've gotten to deal with him a lot of times when he was in St. Louis, and then I covered him in that Florida run a couple years ago. And so I knew that he was a really good guy. I will say that the trade caught me completely off guard. It happened a couple days before July 1. Was not expecting that. We were looking at, potential free agents that they could sign and things like that. And the next thing they do, they get him for free. I didn't have high expectations either, just because really even in that Florida run, other than one round, he didn't score a lot. And then, obviously had a real tough year last year in Detroit, and they gave him the Wild for free. But he has been really good, especially lately. And the other thing, to your point on off the ice, he has been so, I don't think that fans really understand how much of a mentor he has been for Danilo Yurov.
Sure.
He helped him find his apartment. He shuttles him around town. During training camp, he was bringing his laundry home to do it at his house. Has him over for dinner. This is what you want. And this is why, it wouldn't shock me if they bring him back. I've been talking to the Wild have 8 pending unrestricted free agents. We got to see what the futures are for Marcus Johansson and Matt Zuccarello, whether they want to continue playing in the National Hockey League. If they do, and you can get them on bargain deals, I think Billy Guerin would consider that. You got Tarasenko. You got McCarron's the one guy I think might be hard to sign, just because I heard the reason why Nashville wasn't able to keep him is he wanted a fortune, and I just don't know if that's going to be a little too tough to stomach for the Wild. Because the one thing, if you bring some of these guys back, if you re-sign a Bogosian, a Tarasenko, a Zuki, a Johansson, 3 or 4 of those guys, at least you have now a little more fiscal certainty going into an offseason. You know more specifically what you could pay Quinn Hughes on an extension, and then you'll know how much you could afford if you go big game hunting in a trade this offseason for one of the big names that are potentially going to be out there. So I could see the Wild after the season, slowly but surely bringing, 2 or 3 or even more of these guys back.
I do want to look at the matchup between the Wild and Stars, but one more lineup question about the Minnesota Wild, and it pertains to the blue line. They've monkeyed around a little bit since Quinn Hughes got here. It's been Hughes in favor, it's been Brodin and Spurgeon, but they mixed them up a little bit. They kind of experimented Spurgeon with Hughes in particular. I didn't like that as much. I like the Hughes-Faber combination. I love Brodin and Spurgeon together. Do you think that's, I mean, again, nothing's set in stone, but at least for the time being, that has to be their number one option, right? To keep those guys together?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was John trying to, he did it with the forwards too. He's continuing to do it with the forwards, right? I mean, if you make a change in the playoffs, you don't want that to be the first time that Quinn Hughes plays with Jared Spurgeon. Obviously Brodin and Faber have a history of playing together last year. So I don't think it would be as much of a shock to them if all of a sudden, Brock Faber looked to his left and saw Jonas Brodin in the playoffs. But, if Jared Spurgeon and Quinn Hughes never played together, it could be a problem. So I think it was just to get familiarity. So if it has to happen in the playoffs, it's not the first time that they play together. But I think a size issue with that top with the Spurgeon Quinn would be a problem against some of these big like Mikko Rantanen's a horse, Jamie Benn's a horse, Jason Robertson's very very big. I think that would be a tough first pair to have the two of them together. So I like it. I mean, look, Brodin and Spurgeon have been two of the best shutdown D in the league since the Olympics, and according to their numbers analytically. And we know that what Faber and Hughes could do if they could just be, the one thing that they have to do is, they have got to be, if one's going, the other can't go, and that became the issue. The reason where what precipitated the change was that one game in Chicago last month where there was a 1 goal against in the third period, where before the goal against, Faber and Quinn both wound up on the other side of the offensive blue line. And next thing you know, it was an odd man rush, and it became an issue. So that's when it was the next game against Chicago where all of a sudden we saw the change.
A text from the 64686 text line from the 952 area code. Michael Russo, Brock Faber is not a budding star. He's a bona fide star in the National Hockey League. He played in the top 4 in the Olympics, won a gold medal, played a lot of minutes. Give the guy his due. Not a budding star. He's a bona fide star in the National Hockey League. Michael, your response?
I mean, look, all you got to do is read me and listen to me. My respect level for Brock. That's all I need to say on that.
For sure. The matchup with
I love how people just pick words out and want to just create issues.
You should be used to it, right? I mean, this is what we deal with.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good.
I'm surprised that wasn't. I'm sure when I look at my Twitter account, I'll see the same thing.
It was probably.
You can't be more positive than I on this call. Like this is almost uncharacteristically positive, this interview by me, but yet somebody finds it out because I called him a budding star versus a freaking bona fide star. And now it's created a problem for me. I mean, you cannot win in today's, rage bait world.
That's exactly right. And no need to try either.
Thanks, Kevin. I was in such a freaking calm mood, and then you had to go to the text line.
Yeah, sorry. Keep them coming. 64686. Let's see if we can get Michael Russo going. When you talk about this matchup, we can talk about how good the Dallas Stars have been all season, although they've fallen into a little bit of a rut here lately. Like you said, they're not healthy. But when you go in and you look at the Wild versus the Stars, is there any place where the Wild have the advantage in your mind heading into the series?
I mean, I wouldn't say. I think this is a very, very even series. To me, I look at Dallas and I see star power there with Robertson, Johnston, Rantanen, Hintz, if Hintz is healthy. 3 great defensemen in Heiskanen and Harley, and I think Esa Lindell is one of the most underrated defensive defensemen in the NHL. But I look at that at the Wild. I mean, they got 4 bona fide stars in Faber.
We got Russo going.
Hopefully that made that texter happy. Faber, Hughes, Kaprizov. And you know what I really like about this series too is just Eriksson Ek being healthy. I mean, that was a tough go in 2023, Kevin. Look, it could come down to how good Jake Ottinger is versus Philip Gustafsson or Jesper Wallstedt, right? I mean, Jake is really, really good against the Minnesota Wild. He always has been, both at home and away, but especially in Minnesota. And I love Jake Ottinger as a guy. I love him as a player. And so it really could come down to that. If the Wild special teams are as good as it's been in the regular season, they're going to be on par with Dallas. The only other team in the league that's had a better combined special teams than the Wild since really early January is Dallas. So, the two of them have great penalty kills, great power plays. What I also like about this Wild team, if it continues in the playoffs, is their discipline. They've been they've had the second fewest shorthanded opportunities in the league this year. That's very different than 2023, where the Wild at times lost their minds. The one thing that always concerns me when you play Dallas is that they are a bunch of divers. They especially guys like Rantanen. They added Tyler Myers, who's known for slipping. They added Michael Bunting, who's like the king diver. So like that's also the issue, is like if the Wild, they can't get into that game where they just start getting frustrated because they already are almost talking about it behind the scenes and the concern about how the referees just seem to not, ever realize that that's what they're doing. But Dallas and Minnesota, I think these are two very, very even teams, and it's just going to be, who has the better fortitude coming out. And the Wild right now are the healthier team. So I do like them this round. I will actually probably pick them, which I don't do a lot.
Well, and that almost catches me by surprise. The one part where I think, Dallas, at least going into the series, in theory, has the edge is, you mentioned Jake Ottinger, and he's their bona fide number one. Yeah. There's no question about it. He's going to be the guy between the pipes come hell or high water, and for good reason. Where on the other side, it's Philip Gustafsson going in. He's the number one guy, and he's got Jesper Wallstedt waiting in the wings. What is your confidence level in Wallstedt and Gustafsson going into the playoffs? And how, you're hanging your hat on basically Philip Gustafsson, who a guy is, he's had his issues when those lights are shining the brightest.
Yeah, and look, especially like lately, like right after the Olympics, he was really good. In fact, I was, almost surprised just that there wasn't sort of a hangover of the disappointment of being, sort of losing not only his starting job, but even the backup job for Team Sweden, right? He ended the Olympics in the press box and Wallstedt was backing up Markstrom. But lately, it just seems like he'll have these games where he's playing really, really well, and then he just loses focus. Where Wallstedt, just especially against really good teams, has been good. But, Wallstedt went 2 months without a win.
Yep.
So, I obviously Gus is the number one. I will say, if you look at Gus's numbers, in the playoffs, they haven't been losing because of him. Now, obviously, on the penalty kill in the 2023 series, the Wild gave up 9 power play goals. They weren't all his fault, but he could have been better. But it was also 4 years ago, essentially, right? 4 postseasons ago. So I just think that it was a real big learning experience for him. I thought he was much better against Vegas last year. What they also got to hope for is he doesn't have these spells where all of a sudden he's leaving the ice because he's sick. That seems to be a trend that's happening lately.
Yeah.
Last year in Game 5, remember that game that the Wild could have won. Unfortunately, the Gus Nyquist offside. But remember, in the third period, all of a sudden Marc-Andre Fleury was called upon. So it was Fleury in net for that overtime loss. Because all of a sudden Gus got sick in the middle of that game. So this is now becoming, something that's
and the Four Nations, and you look at what happened in the Olympics. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity to solidify your resume. This is when you get a chance to show that this is the new Philip Gustafsson. Whatever happened in the past doesn't matter. I'm a good goaltender. I've got the resume to prove it. Now I'm going to back it up by performing in the playoffs and not coming down with a tummy ache and not coming down with, whatever it is that he's dealt with in the past. This is his opportunity to stamp, Philip Gustafsson as a legit number one goaltender when it matters.
Yeah, and to that point, the Wild are in this, they have put their chips in the middle of the table here, and they want to, not only win the first round, but go on a run. So to your point there, I do wonder how big, if there are struggles early in the series, how big of and it's the wrong word to use, but leash he gets. Because when you know that you have Wallstedt behind him, do you give him that opportunity? Now, the Stanley Cup playoffs is a very different animal than when Jesper's had to deal with before. Yep. So, are you willing to put in a rookie in that situation, especially against a team that, remember his NHL debut here, they absolutely destroyed him. To the point that, remember, John Hines went to the back of the plane and gave him a pep talk afterwards because they knew they put him in an awful position. And remember, that happened too because all of a sudden Gustafsson and Fleury both weren't available to play. So, we'll see what happens. But I think that it really could come down to goaltending. And look, I mean, obviously you're going to give Dallas the edge in that situation just because of who Jake Ottinger is. But it's not like, I'm not as concerned about Gus as I know a lot of people are, but he's obviously got to be, like tonight, he's got to be really, really good to just give him that confidence that he could do it.
Last question about the Masterton Trophy nominee. When we're talking about goaltenders, one of them is Jesper Wallstedt, and that's the writer's pick, the Masterton Trophy nominee for 2026, Jesper Wallstedt. You think about where he was at the beginning of this season, Michael, a big question mark coming into this year. Last year was supposed to be the three-headed monster, and he was supposed to move past the future Hall of Famer in Marc-Andre Fleury. That didn't happen. He stubbed his toe, didn't look good in Iowa. Not a good team in front of him either, but that was a terrible year for Jesper Wallstedt. The way he's resurrected his season and his career, why was Jesper Wallstedt the right pick for the Masterton Trophy nominee for the Minnesota Wild?
I think everything that you just laid out, the dedication, like this award is about dedication and perseverance, and he had to persevere through a lot of things. And as you know, more than, a lot of people, being a goaltender, it is such a mental position where you're alone on this island. And, I think there was a lot of concern about him coming into this year. But, he's had a really quality year. He was obviously unbeatable in November. He was one of the best players in the league, not just goaltenders. And he set a wild single season rookie record for victories. So he was really candid in just what he was dealing with mentally last year, his openness and in seeing somebody they trust, a sports psychologist, somebody that he continues to talk to all the time to try to, keep him level headed during the ups and downs of being alone on that island. And so we just were really impressed with him. And so, the Twin Cities chapter, we had a vote, and he won it with honestly a landslide. The way that we do it is sort of your first, second, and third pick, and he won, and I think he had every first place vote by far. So there you go. I mean, I think it's a great pick. Obviously, it's a tough. The Wild have been, have had winners in the past with Dubnyk and Harding. I can't remember, did Dumba win it as well?
I don't believe he won it, but I know he was nominated.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I think he won the King Clancy is what I'm thinking of. But this year, I mean, there's so many great, Clayton Keller, Gabriel Landeskog, Jonathan Taves, Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, Dahlin. I mean, there's, he's not going to be a finalist, but he's definitely, I thought, the right pick for the Wild.
Fantastic. I really appreciate your time and effort. Look forward to reading all the great stuff you put out there tonight after the Wild and Stars and during it, because you are a very active Twitter user during the contest, and hopefully everyone gives you your just due. You do like Brock Faber, even if he's not a bona fide NHL superstar in your mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Send me that guy's phone number, by the way. I'd like to send him a little note.
All right, we'll do. Michael, thank you.
All right, see ya. Take care.
Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com. Yeah, read anything and everything he's got. The preeminent authority of all things hockey, not just the Minnesota Wild, but in the world of that fine sport. Michael Russo is the best blogger on the face of the earth, and he loves being called a blogger, too. So if you really want to get into under his skin, that's the way to do it. First hour in the book. When we continue, we're going to talk to a Wild prospect. Charlie Stramos signed his entry-level deal earlier this week, and we'll talk to the former Sparty next on The Fan.